Recorded live from Hong Kong and Toronto. Let's go! This is the PR and Law Podcast.
The PR and Law Podcast.
Turn it up. With your hosts, Cam McMurchie and Ewan Christie.
We have made it to episode 50 of the PR and Law Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McMurchie, along with Ewan Christie.
Hello, Cameron.
Ewan's an employment lawyer and partner at Duntroon LLP in Toronto, Canada, online at duntroon.law. I'm a PR guy based in Hong Kong and publisher of the Digital Bits PR and Communications newsletter at digitalbitspr.com. If you enjoy the podcast, please tell a friend. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud, and our newsletter, of course, at PRLawPodcast.Club, C-L-U-B. Ewan, what's happening? Happy Easter. I know it's Easter Sunday there where you're recording in that hemisphere.
It is indeed. Happy Easter to you too, Cam. What's going on?
Well, one of the holdovers from British colonial days in this territory is the Easter holiday. It has survived the handover back to China, and this and Christmas and a few others are still celebrated here. So we do get the Friday and Monday off work, but we also get the Chinese holidays. So Tombsweeping Festival is a very traditional Chinese holiday where you go to the graves of your ancestors and you clean them off and make sure they look good and you remember them. And that also falls on Easter Sunday this year. So we get a day off in lieu for that on Tuesday. So it's a 5-day weekend. So I cannot complain. I don't need to end this early to get on a meeting or get on a call. It's nice.
Wow. Well, that's nice. That's great. I do not have tomorrow off. It is a working day here, although the schools are closed. So that means it will only be a sort of working day because I'll have my daughter to hang out and play with.
I don't want to bore people here, but like Friday is a statutory holiday in Canada, correct? But Monday is a holiday, but not a statutory holiday. Is that how it works? And what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's correct. There may be, some individuals working for the federal government, perhaps, that get it off. I'm not entirely sure, actually. I probably should know that.
You're the employment lawyer.
Yes, exactly.
Continue the debate with us on social media. Join us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PR Law Podcast. All one word, PRLAW Podcast. Send us your questions now by email to askus@PRLawPodcast.com. That's all one word, askus@PRLawPodcast.com. Or on social media with the hashtag PRLawPod. That's hashtag PRLAWPOD.
Ewan, I understand that you want to talk about the company that everybody loves to buy from, but also everybody loves to hate. What is it?
Yeah, Amazon. Have you heard of them? Are you familiar with the company?
I have a few boxes laying around, yes.
You do, right? Yeah. I suspect actually
most people do.
I'd be more surprised if there was anybody listening to this who didn't know who Amazon was. That would almost be like a podcast episode unto itself. Let's interview the individual who doesn't know who Amazon is. I wanted to talk about Amazon, Cam, because as I'm sure you've seen, it's been a big story in the news. There are nearly 6,000 Amazon workers in Alabama who are voting on whether or not to unionize and form a bargaining unit represented by the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, Cameron.
Okay.
So they've literally, they've been casting ballots for more than a month in this thing. The votes are in, they're being tallied. If successful, they would be the first group of Amazon workers in the US to be unionized. So suffice it to say, Cam, the outcome of the vote is being closely watched, not only by Amazon, but obviously by other industry leaders. And there is always that threat when you have large companies that have a face-off with a union, that there could be sort of that snowball effect. If, one group of employees is able to collectively bargain, what does that mean for other Amazon warehouses or other companies.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If they do certify this union, what does that mean for people working for Amazon elsewhere in the US and maybe elsewhere in the world?
Well, that's just it. I mean, technically, it doesn't mean anything for them, right? They're not the ones that are being that would be certified, but they may look to their, their colleagues, or I guess their brothers and sisters in union parlance, and think, well, things seem to be going pretty well for them. Perhaps they look at some of the perks that they're getting under unionization. And, we're always talking about sort of those same typical things. Like what do you get out of this, right? Well, principally you get the right to strike. You also get the right to conduct workplace stoppages. And given that Amazon's entire business model is based on getting orders to your doorstep as fast as possible, that could certainly impact the bottom line. And union advocates, they're arguing the same stuff that union advocates typically are supportive of, which would be, better job security, safer working conditions, higher wages, better benefits, these sorts of things, Cam.
Yeah. And so this warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, by the way, Alabama is beautiful. I've been there. Nice state, although I was in Mobile, which is much further south. But it's a big warehouse. I mean, there's almost 6,000 workers there, which is, it's quite a lot. I mean, I'm used to sort of Chinese standards of warehouses or factories, which number in the hundreds of thousands of people. But this is big for sort of a smaller urban area in the state. And so it impacts a lot of people. And, we talked a little bit off the air about sort of what Amazon would do if this came to pass, and potentially closing this down is one option. You may recall that Amazon pulled out of Brooklyn after they faced some regulatory or tax issues there. But that was something that had not been opened yet. This is already open. This warehouse is functional and the employees are there, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult. But considering the implications that you just explained, in terms of what Amazon may face and how this may spread and how it really could significantly impact its business. Do you see closing down as a viable option for them, or do you think they were more likely to accept this and continue?
Yeah, I mean that's the $1 million question, right? Do I think that they would strongly consider doing it? Of course. I mean, obviously, right? They're going to want to quash this any way they can. My understanding from some of the articles I've read is that they've made a fairly aggressive push at the factory itself in terms of posting pamphlets in washrooms, having individuals come in and speak to employees about the perils of unionization and the pros of remaining independent and having that direct line of communication to the employer without having a third party involved. So, I mean, Amazon has been on it. And look, I mean, and again, Cam, to talk about just how significant this is literally the first time that Amazon has faced a union vote in 7 years. And, let's sort of break this down a little bit. That doesn't mean that Amazon has faced threats or has not faced threats from unions at other locations in the United States, because of course they have. It just means that they've been extraordinarily successful at ensuring that those drives don't get to the point where there's an actual vote. So this is the first time there's been a vote in 7 years. So could they shut down? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one of the articles that I've read, we'll post in the show notes. They interviewed a labor lawyer who serves as the lead counsel for the RWDSU union. And, he is of the mind that they will not shut down. And of course he's going to say that he represents the union. But part of the argument in support of that is that Amazon is slated to build another facility at a mall that had been closed elsewhere in Birmingham. So look, I mean, I don't think that that's conclusive of anything. I mean, I think we're talking about a company that is so big and so wealthy that to walk away from two factories is just a drop in the bucket. I think the bigger issue, Cam, is what sort of message would it send to employees elsewhere? And as you sort of mentioned right off the top, it's not like Amazon is getting a lot of cheery, sunny press these days in terms of its treatment of workers. So, that could just be a further sort of nail in the coffin of how they perceive the value of their labor, of their workers, of their employees. So I think they're going to have to tread carefully on this. That's for sure.
This is an interesting trend because you make a good point about how there's been some negative press around Amazon, and there has been for years in terms of how they treat their workers. I think the first one came out maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago about, defecating into cups or peeing into bottles because they're in warehouses and can't take bathroom breaks, things like that. If I recall, the New York Times actually did the first big expose into this several years ago. But you know what? In the intervening years, Amazon has just grown exponentially. So its profits in 2020. Its net sales were up 44% over 2019. That's during a pandemic. And it brought fourth quarter profits to $125 billion US. And so, some of that is people are ordering from Amazon because there's not other stores open. But I think it would be a mistake to think that it's something that we can assume goes back to normal. I don't think so. And so I've wondered this for a while. How much do people really care? Because you're right. These workers have been treated poorly. There have been many reports over many years, but yet more and more people keep ordering from Amazon. So I don't see any link there, at least this far. And the new reports that are coming out now of some of the worker treatment have been around for a while. So it's not new. And so I'm wondering if there is going to be a link here, or if maybe the workers are kind of overplaying it by thinking that the people would support them.
Yeah, great point. We'll link to a great story that I read in The Intercept that was just published last week, actually. And it contains a bunch of leaked documents, internal documents from Amazon, and it relates to just what you're talking about, Cam. Specifically, delivery drivers peeing and defecating in bottles because they don't have time to get to a washroom because they have to keep up with their delivery schedules. And what's sort of interesting about this subject is that, yes, to your point, this isn't anything new. This has been a problem for delivery drivers and in warehouses at Amazon for a number of years. But what's interesting is the pandemic context, and that the number of people that have been ordering from Amazon has obviously exploded. You sort of talked about some of their financial numbers over the last year. And that has just applied more pressure, more stress, greater demands on the workers who are there, more stringent deadlines. So this is a problem that's actually getting worse. And I think that it is sort of an interesting coincidence that this is now sort of coming to a head in terms of this union vote in the context of the pandemic. And, you might recall, Cam, if we go all the way back to episode 38, we talked about a group of 200 engineers, I think it was, across a number of Google locations in the US and Canada that signed cards to form the Alphabet Workers Union, right? And then on top of that, we've also talked on the show a number of times about Uber drivers, notably in California, who have pushed for greater rights and recognition under the law. So it's sort of an interesting trend that's developing in these large companies in a way that I can't really recall seeing going back even 10, 15, 20 years. So it's interesting when you sort of throw all of these massive companies into a bucket, you mix it up in a pandemic context, and all of a sudden, these issues seem to be coming to the forefront in a way they haven't in a very, very long time.
Yeah, and I wonder if part of that is just the sheer number of people that are working for these companies too. When you look back to in the labor unions sort of strong years in the 50s and 60s, a lot of people working for automakers and companies like that or in those sectors. Tech has always been more service, right, rather than manufacturing, and there's been fewer jobs at these big companies than there were at the previous generation of large US companies. But it's kind of changing, at least at Amazon, because you do need people to fill these warehouse jobs, at least now. Some of that has been automated away, and I think more of it will be automated away. But they're also hiring more and more people too, to deal with this, and maybe that has an effect, because you've got more and more people working for this one company, feeling mistreated and able to kind of work together to try and bring this union vote in.
Well, yeah, and high turnover, right?
Yeah.
You make a great point about constantly having to hire new employees to keep these massive warehouses staffed. There was a report in the Seattle Times that talked about Amazon and how they had to refill positions at a rate of 96% between March and September of 2020.
That's a disaster, yeah.
I mean, that's insane. So, whenever you have that sort of employee dissatisfaction, I mean, you're going to run into these kinds of issues. So, I mean, that tells me that the company needs to do something to address this issue. And perhaps there are other tech companies that need to do the same. I don't know. I mean, certainly don't have any of that sort of specific data at my fingertips to sort of tap into right now, but I'm sure Amazon's not alone in this, Cam. And again, I think it strikes me as a rather odd coincidence that we have a number of these tech startups that are facing pushback from workers in a way that we haven't seen in quite some time. And I'm very, very curious to see how this plays out over the coming year and coming years.
Show your support to the PR and Law podcast by making a one-time donation or setting up a subscription with us on Patreon. Every little bit helps us keep the lights on and bring the show to you each week. If you'd like to chip in, please visit PRLawPodcast.com. That's PRLawPodcast.com. Click support the show. Thanks for helping us out.
All right, Ewan, just a few days ago was April Fool's Day, and did you fall for any jokes? Was any joke played on you, by your wife, your daughter, somebody?
No, you know what, Cam, and at this point, it's become such a thing, right? Online for companies to sort of push these gags that it's lost a little bit of its luster for me. I don't know about you. I mean, I remember the first few years where I definitely I was had a number of times, and now I'm just kind of like, well.
Yeah, I don't like using the phrase "jump the shark" because I think it's jump the shark, but this is jump the shark. No question about it. The April Fool's Day jokes, because I remember even when I was younger, I had my first radio job in Victoria, Canada, Victoria, BC. And I remember going into the newsroom there and, they were doing an April Fool's Day joke about the Indie Vancouver. You remember the Indie circuit, Ewan, and how it was going to come to Victoria. And they had selected, a street course for the Indy, and it was going to go over the bridge, the Johnson Street Bridge, all of these places. And it was kind of a big hit. It was a bit of a story, and it was interesting, but it was all a joke, and no harm was done. Got a lot of attention. I guess that's kind of what you're looking for. But now I feel like brands are just trying too hard with it, and the novelty is absolutely gone. And I think if you have kind of a failed April Fool's Day joke for your brand, actually that's almost okay, because it can also do a lot of real damage to your brand, believe it or not. And, we looked at this just over the past few days about what did brands do this year? And then I came across a really interesting article online, which I will link to in the show notes, from the Content Marketing Institute, about how brands should approach April Fool's Day, not to fall into these traps, and whether brands should even get involved at all. And I'm glad that you mentioned to me off the air about Volkswagen. And when I took a look at this, and maybe our listeners heard or saw this as well, but on April 1st, they issued a press release saying the company was going to focus on electric vehicles and change its name to Voltswagen, VOLTS wagon. And it went out. At first, it had an error date on the press release of April 29th. And that confused people, because there were some reporters who got the release and went, oh, this is might be an April Fool's Day joke, but then looked at the date and it was the wrong date. And so that led them to take it a bit more seriously. This caused some confusion, though. And it was interesting because Ad Age, which is one of the big sort of marketing industry publications, was interviewing VW's American VP of Marketing, Kimberly Gardner. And, it's a startling interview, Ewan, because you would think that she would be briefed on something like a name change of the brand that she's responsible for promoting in her country. And this is what...
I would hope so, yeah.
This is how that interview went.
Press release that went out that says that you are changing your name to Voltswagen, Voltswagen. Is this real? Is this happening?
I was just texting with my PR team and I've asked them to handle it. It sounded like that release has come down since you mentioned that, EJ. So it's a surprise to me. And all I can say is I'm asking my PR people to get on it right now.
So is this, I know April Fool's Day is around the corner.
It is coming around the corner. I can't even believe it's March. Not that I'm aware of right now. Like I said, PR is taking the release down. So yeah, okay, no other comment right now.
All right, we'll update our readers on what we find out about that.
Sorry about that.
but moving on.
Awkward. Very awkward.
You could just tell by the way she's, I'm sorry about that. What she's really saying is someone is going to die.
I'm going to kill somebody.
Someone is going to die.
Yep. Yeah. And it's, that's the audio. I will put a link to this article and that interview in the show notes as well, because it's even more awkward to watch. She's clearly confused. And that's the worst, especially for a PR person. She's the VP of marketing, right? So she should know this sort of thing. And to be caught off guard like that is just awful. Like it's unforgivable, really. Like you never want to put your executives in that kind of position. It's the worst. So, this kind of backfired rather for Voltswagen. But it does beg the question, if you're going to do this, how should you do this? What should you look out for? And actually, like, my advice would be don't do it. Like, quite frankly, I just don't know if it's worth it. I think that there may be gains if you can pull off something that's absolutely perfect and somehow, generates new conversions or sales for your brand or whatever it might be. But why not just put that energy into an actual real campaign than around April 1st? Because there are some downsides to it. So if you are going to go about it, Ewan, the first lesson, integrate it into your brand. So, one company that has actually done this well, Ewan, is one that we've talked about in the past, which is Burger King. And, they play around with April Fools every year, basically. But their focus really is to be playful and never be mean-spirited, is what they say. And so their global chief marketing officer, his name is Fernando Machado, said April Fools has become a major date for Burger King, and our campaigns have generated massive engagement with a younger and often harder to reach audience. And I'm going to play one example of a Burger King ad. I don't know. It's not really my thing, but I guess it did well for them and they were happy with it. Let's see what you think, Ewan. Hang on.
Our flamed grilled Whopper is so good that some people will do anything to keep the taste in their mouth.
To keep the Whopper's taste in my mouth, haven't brushed my teeth for 2 weeks. It really works. But my wife dumped me.
We're done.
Don't worry, Burger King has the answer. To keep your mouth Whopper fresh, use Whopper toothpaste.
For real?
Yes, its flame-grilled micro-granules enriched with sesamium seeds contribute to your oral health. From day one, the ultra-fresh advanced Whopper technology will help keep your breath Whopper fresh longer than ever. And you'll notice the results immediately.
It smells of Whopper in here. Did you brush your teeth?
Whopper toothpaste. Keep your mouth Whopper fresh 24/7.
Contains Whopper, not to be used before 3 p.m. Ask your restaurant before using.
Thoughts?
All right. Not bad. Not bad, Burger King. Better than their last PR blitz about keeping women in the kitchen.
Yes.
Probably a little bit better.
You know what? And I'm glad you brought that up. So that was an episode, Ewan? I'm going to have to go back and check. But we did a long look at Burger King just a couple of episodes ago. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Around the International Women's Day, because they put out a tweet that said women belong in the kitchen. Followed up by a tweet explaining what that meant, but the damage kind of had already been done. And I think that's a good juxtaposition from this, Ewan, because they are trying to be playful, but in trying to be playful and get attention, you can inadvertently cross that line, which is something that I think they did because they have a long history of doing this kind of thing. So I think that was very inadvertent. And I think that's what makes this so dangerous to get involved with. Because you can think that it's funny. You can think that maybe the consumers will get the joke or they're in on the joke. And maybe some are, but maybe some aren't. And it's hard. Humor also is very, very specific, right? I mean, some things that are funny to some people are not funny to others. So it's hard. I'm not saying don't do this. I mean, in a way, I'm saying don't do this. But if you're going to do it, just be really careful about it. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Don't send your marketing executive to an interview about how your company has changed its name when they're unaware of it. Yeah,
exactly.
It seems to be sort of like PR 101, Cam.
Yep. So point number 2. So number 1 was integrate it into your brand. So Burger King did a good job there. Point number 2 is create distinct but related content. And I think this is good too. If you're going to do something like this, have it closely related to your brand. Again, I think the Burger King example is pretty good. I mean, it's toothpaste, but it's Whopper toothpaste. And there is kind of a tie there. And, one example here is the website Rent the Runway, which allows you to sort of rent really expensive clothes. And a couple of years ago, they did an April Fool's Day gag called Rent the Runway for dogs with sort of dog clothes and stuff on there. But in doing so, they created a new landing page with this campaign on it, right? Like Rent the Runway is, launching Rent the Runway for dogs, and here's how it works, and look, here's all the funny, good pictures of dogs, blah, 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 blah. But the benefit of doing that is you can direct media or consumers to that page, and that can generate some publicity or media articles or stories about your brand because you can send them somewhere. And I think that's actually kind of a key point. You want to send them a link to say, oh, what April Fool's Day gag did you do? Oh, here it is. So if you are going to do it, I think this is another benefit is you want to send them somewhere where it's clear and you can get some attention.
I like that idea. It actually kind of reminds me of a good campaign that CBC, which is, the Canadian public broadcaster, did last year. Anybody who's been to Toronto knows that we have something of a raccoon issue. Ugh. And while they may look cute and cuddly,
they are not.
They are not cute. They are not cute. They are not cuddly. Most Torontonians at some point in their lives will have a nasty run-in with a raccoon, often, sort of jumping out at you in the dark.
Yeah, they're big. Oh.
As you're walking out of your house or your apartment, what have you. They're big. They can be vicious. And they had this great bit on radio where they interviewed a woman who was talking about different recipes to cook raccoon.
Oh, no.
And how barbecued raccoon is actually wonderful. And of course, the whole city was in a big uproar about this and thought that it was real and was going to how could you cook raccoons? But it was brilliant. And to your point, Cam, it had everybody logging on to the CBC website, sharing the story through the socials. And it proved to be a really, really successful campaign for a public broadcaster that isn't typically sort of, wrapped up in these kind of cool stories. So yeah, I get it.
Where do raccoons go during the day? Because
great question.
Like they're big. I mean, I know like cockroaches come out at night, right? But they're tiny and hide places. Where do raccoons go? Like because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them in other parts of Canada too.
I don't know. I mean, they spend a lot of time in trees on rooftops.
Oh, geez, imagine them falling out of a tree. Ugh.
Yeah, but they are everywhere.
Yeah.
They are everywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's another discussion. That's for our raccoon podcast. Point number 3 is don't disrupt function. And I think this is really important too. Don't like it's meant to be a joke and don't disrupt people. Like if people are trying to use your product to get work done or because they're busy, like don't interrupt them. And we're going to pick on Google here for a second because there was a Google fail from a few years ago where Google added a new feature to Gmail, and it was an orange button next to the standard send button. But if you clicked on the orange button, it delivered email with a GIF or GIF of a yellow minion character dropping a microphone. And the mic drop ended the conversation, preventing the sender from seeing subsequent replies. So it was actually harmful. And Google eventually had to write that it looks like we pranked ourselves this year. Due to a bug, the mic drop feature inadvertently caused more headaches than laughs. We're truly sorry. End quote.
Wow. I hadn't heard that.
And This was April 1st, 2016, that this happened. And I think that's just a good example of understand why you want to do this, right? And you should walk through these impacts as you consider different ideas. You know, is it light? Is it going to offend somebody? Is it offensive, on any level? Is this going to disrupt the user experience? Is this going to confuse people? Is it going to have them very concerned about the future of the company or certain products? Like you don't want to trigger any of these things, because then, like Google had said, it would cause a lot more headaches than laughs. And I think these are some good things to keep in mind when April Fool's Day rolls around in 2022.
Yeah, this sounds way too perilous to try and navigate, Cam. It kind of sends me back to your initial comment of, I would recommend that you just don't bother doing this. It seems like the cons far outweigh the potential pros.
Yeah, and I do feel that way, but I also feel bad that I feel that way, because I don't want to sound like I'm discouraging fun or humor, or lightness, because I think the whole world needs more of that, really, in my opinion. This is just the world that we're in, though. And if you can't guarantee that that's what you're delivering, I don't think the risks are worth it. And maybe that's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, you are trying to protect your brand. That's the number one function, of a communications person or a marketing person in these companies, and you have to take that responsibility seriously. I think a lot of times that will mean avoid April Fool's Day jokes.
Wait a minute. Check this out.
Whoa, hey, check this out.
No, wait. Oh, check it out.
I want you to check this out.
On the PR and Law Podcast.
What do you got, Ewan?
Great story I read, Cam, earlier this week. There's an audio clip to go with it for people to listen to, but this was an NPR story on the ruthless ranking of the 25 best Muppets, Cam.
Really?
Muppets. The Muppets. Everybody loves the Muppets.
Who
right?
finished first?
Well,
Hermit.
I don't know. I mean, should I say it on the air?
You're not gonna spoil it for us? Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I should spoil it.
Okay. That's fine.
It's a very, very thorough, detailed. I mean, this credit. I tip my hat to NPR. They took this very, very seriously, Cam. There was over 1,800 votes.
Really?
That were cast. 150 different Muppets received votes. So any Muppet from any property or era was eligible.
I didn't know there were that many. 150.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got The Muppet Show. You've got Muppet Babies, Fraggle Rock. You've got Sesame Street, Labyrinth, Cam. Yeah. Do you remember Labyrinth?
Labyrinth, no. But I loved Fraggle Rock as a kid. That was one of my favorite shows.
Okay. Well, Labyrinth is worth... it's worth revisiting. My daughter's a huge fan. David Bowie, Cam. Jim Henson, David Bowie.
Oh, wow.
It's the early 80s.
Okay. I have an idea.
Nothing makes any sense. But yeah, David Bowie, Muppets, big hair, and cheesy music.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, check it out. It's great. I was happy to see that Beaker made the list. And the Swedish Chef, definitely favorites of mine. So check it out, Cam.
I will. This sounds good, Ewan. I'm going to name 3 things today. I want to apologize in advance for doing that, but because we've had a couple of days off, we finally got to see a couple of movies, and so we picked a couple of films up for Best Picture Oscars this year. The first being The Father, which stars Anthony Hopkins, and it is probably one of the most emotionally impactful films I've maybe ever seen.
Wow.
It's a remarkable film. It was shot in Britain. It's actually a British film, but it deals with the issue of Alzheimer's and dementia. And the movie is a bit confusing because of that, because it's kind of seen through the eyes of somebody who has that illness. And it's one of the first movies I can think of actually that has dealt with that issue in this way. But it's remarkable, absolutely worthy of Best Picture nomination in my view. And then the other one is Minari, which is the Korean film, and this is it's in Korean mostly. There's bits of English, so it's a subtitled movie. It's the second Korean film in as many years to be nominated for Best Picture. But this one is in the United States, and it's a young family that left Korea to settle in California for a few years. And then after saving enough money, the father took them out to Arkansas, very rural Arkansas, where he wanted to grow Korean vegetables. This is based on a true story. It's the little boy in the film who the little boy character is the one who grew up to make this film, and he was nervous about showing his family when it was done because it's also a heart-wrenching film, and it talks about the struggles that immigrant families have when they come to a new country and try and fit in and have some financial troubles, and very unpredictable, but just remarkable. Yeah, these are two of the best films that I can remember, and I'm quite critical of films, Ewan. I don't watch a lot of movies just because I find a lot of them either too predictable or just too, I don't know. I'd rather read something or do something else. But these were both absolutely excellent. I can't recommend them highly enough.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, yeah. And I know the father also stars Olivia Colman, which
it does. Yes.
Any of the fans of The Crown out there, she's the actress who plays Queen Elizabeth in the latter seasons. I don't know if you're a Crown fan, Cam.
I have watched. I have watched The Crown, and I quite like it, actually. But I'm the only one around here who likes it. So.
Really? Yeah, I got really kind of hooked on it, actually. I actually quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's good. And then the third one, Ewan, I just want to give a shout out to The Athletic. I've been a subscriber from pretty early days. It's the sports publication that's been around now for several years. They basically went out and hired all of the top sports journalists at newspapers in Canada and the US, and they really have remarkable sports coverage now. And it's a daily read for me. I think they're great. And one of the reasons is I often find things in there that just the regular media would just never cover. And I didn't know this, but as I was reading The Athletic last night, I came across a guy named Pete Weber. Pete Weber is a bowler. He's one of the best bowlers to ever play in the Professional Bowling League. Maybe it's the association. I think it's the PBA. But anyway, he's famous for kind of a WWE style victory celebration. And this is from 2012. You can kind of hear what he's saying here, but it's almost it's bowling's equivalent of like bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, full count kind of thing. He needs to get a strike to win the championship. And here's the audio of Pete Weber.
Strike to claim it. A strike to claim it. And he got it!
That's number 5. Are you kidding me? That's right. Who do you think you are? I am. Get it right.
That was a lot of third person references there, Cam. Wow.
The video is hilarious. But his line there, he said, "Who do you think you are?" And then he pointed himself and said, "I am." And he explained later, he was trying to say, like, who do you think is the best? I am. But he was so overcome with emotion. He said, "Who do you think you are? I am." And this has become a meme on the bowling tour. And so he has just retired. And that's why this story was written and why the clip was shared. And I just thought, this is why I like reading The Athletic. This would never have come up. I never heard the name Pete Weber. I know nothing about bowling. And then when you come across somebody who's had such an impact in a certain area, be it a sport or a profession, I find that interesting. Like this person has dedicated his life to bowling and I'd never heard of him. And I like coming across stuff like that I have just no idea about and learn something. So it was great. I'll link to that article in the show notes as well.
I don't know. He sounds like he should be getting his own biopic, Cam. We should be talking about his Oscar-nominated film.
You know what? That may happen at some point because he in the 80s, he was, he was doing the drugs and the gambling and the partying as a younger man on the bowling tour. And then he
as
became,
you do.
as you do. So yeah, he brought a lot of attention to bowling. Anyway, yeah, lots of stuff to check out. Anything you want to add, Ewan, as we sign off Easter Sunday?
That's it, my friend. That's it. Enjoy your days off.
Yeah, thanks.
Monday, Tuesday, tomb sweeping day, Cam.
Yep. Thank you guys so much for joining us again this week. Don't miss a show. You can subscribe to us in your podcast app of choice. For me, that's Overcast, but you can use whatever one you like. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube or SoundCloud channels. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you can get our newsletter at PRLawPodcast.Club. So for you and Christy, this is Cam McMurtry. Light it up.
This has been the PR and Law Podcast with Cam McMurtry and Ewan Christie. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or leave a review. You can also join us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by following our account at PR Law Podcast. That's all one word, PRLAW Podcast. Thanks for your support.